Hello and welcome to the Inferno. My name is Julia Bertacci. I've been a professional chef for a little bit over 15 years, originally from the Boston area, now operating Bertacci Inferno out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Today we're going to be cooking 3 really simple, really delicious, easy to replicate meals at home. This is an example of a meal that I would cook for my family any night of the week and would work really well for any holiday dinner that you're planning this season. We're going to get right into the first meal, which is Tuscan chicken. It's going to be a chicken tenderloin, sun-dried tomato, cream, full host of fresh herbs that's going to be served on top of fresh linguine. The other items that we're going to be covering are galleta salad, which is arugula. It's going to be tossed in a scratch lemon, olive oil vinaigrette, topped with shaved Parmesan and toasted pine nuts. And lastly, but probably served first, will be the appetizer, which is the ricotta dip, which is whipped ricotta, a little bit of salt and pepper, some braised tomatoes on the outside, drizzle of sun-dried tomato puree, a little bit of lemon zest, served with toasted Italian crostini. So we're going to get right into the chicken now. I've got a pan heated to about medium-high, and what we're going to do is we're going to start building the sauce, building the base. You've probably heard the term aromatics in other videos that you've seen, and that simply means that you're going to be taking ingredients and cooking it with a fat base to infuse that fat with all the flavor that will transcend into the rest of the meal. That being said, we're going to add some butter to this pan and we're going to start cooking our garlic. So we're going to add about 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to raise the heat. So we've got the heat on high. This should cook down pretty quick. One thing to note about garlic, you have to keep a very close eye on it. A lot of times dishes that will call for onions and garlic, you often want to cook the onions first, let those cook down, and then you add the garlic, and that is because garlic tends to burn and cooks a lot quicker. So we're going to keep a close eye on this. That's why we're added a bunch of butter to the pan. In here, and it really depends on how many people you're serving, but generally speaking, this should serve about 4 to 6 people. So I'm going to start with about 2 very generous tablespoons of fresh chopped garlic. Now to this, we're going to add chopped rosemary. One important thing I teach all of my students is the distinction between an herb and a spice. But there's 2 different categories of herbs. You've got an herb such as parsley, excuse me, I'm going to turn this down. Herbs such as parsley, basil, tarragon, those are things that are very leafy, the stems are very fine, very water-filled. Then you have herbs such as rosemary, thyme, those sort of grow on bushes. They're a lot sturdier and thus the flavor gets released really only with a fat. So you're going to add your heartier herbs to the butter. Again, it's an aromatic. Don't be shy. I think one of the major faults of the average home cook is a fear of seasoning. Fear of seasoning in general and also a fear of salt. But with this, you just want to throw it all in there. There's no such thing as too much fresh herbs. Cannot go wrong. So we're going to let this cook a little bit. Let the butter melt. Again, keeping a very keen eye on the garlic, making sure that it doesn't burn, because once it burns, it's burned and you have to throw the whole thing out. So again, we've got butter, we have rosemary, and we have fresh garlic. These are going to start to simmer. What I have in this bowl, which I made before in advance, this is a puree of sun-dried tomatoes and extra virgin olive oil. You can go for a rougher consistency if you like. I find that this is great for building a sauce, nice and smooth. All I did was take a food processor. I'd say the ratio of sun-dried tomatoes to oil would be double the amount of oil to the sun-dried tomatoes. Puree it till it's nice and smooth. Add about a teaspoon of salt. In total, I probably used a cup of sun-dried tomatoes to about 1 3/4 cups of oil. And because this is fat-based, we can add this now. This will help saute all of the aromatics. Word of the day. And touching back on what I was saying about herbs, the distinction between herbs earlier, between ones that are very flimsy and ones that are sturdier, and why you need to use the sturdy ones. The flavors get released in fat. For example, I have fresh basil here that we're gonna add towards the end. And the reason we're gonna add it towards the end is because it's just not a very strong plant. So all of the flavor you wanna get at the very end as fresh as possible. So you can see here, unfortunately you can't smell this, but it smells quite delightful. We're gonna keep stirring this, saute it for about 2 to 3 minutes. Now with this dish and this recipe specifically, it's just gonna have chicken and spinach, but if you wanna add mushrooms, artichoke hearts, peas, any sort of vegetables, anything from a traditional sofrito or the trindy, you know, carrots, onions, celery, the sky's the limit. This is a really great sort of, not blank canvas, but you can add anything that you want to suit your own taste. So we've got our, essentially we're frying the garlic right now. And what I have here is I have chicken tenderloins, which I've already taken the tendon out. And I will give you a quick demonstration of how to do that easily. There are a lot of videos online which really tout the fork and paper towel method, which it's very effective. But the other very easy way to do it, again using a paper towel, is relying on the sharpness of your knife to do the work for you. So in every chicken tenderloin, you'll see this little white piece at the top. All you're gonna do is just pinch it with a paper towel. If you don't, then you won't be able to pinch it with your fingers because generally raw chicken is slippery. So you're just gonna get a good grip on that, find where it starts, flip it over so that the majority of the meat is on top. And then you're just gonna kind of press your knife in, wiggle it, and you're gonna pull, and you'll have the tendon out very easily. And then you can just chop, add to the already cleaned chicken. At this point, we're gonna keep the heat very high because we want to sear our chicken. So we're gonna throw it right in here right now. Give that a good stir, let all of those flavors infuse the chicken. Okay, so we're gonna let this chicken sear for a little bit. We're gonna make a little well in the center, and this is where we're gonna put our tomato paste. You're gonna put about another generous 2 tablespoons. And you're gonna wanna stir this in and incorporate it fairly quickly, because tomatoes have a fair amount of sugar in them, and if you do not stir and keep an eye on it, it will burn, like everything else. But stir the tomato paste into the chicken, the herbs, and the butter. And even though this pan may look crowded, the chicken will still get a nice sort of toasty sear because of the amount of fat in the pan. So we're gonna let that cook for a few minutes. I'm gonna lower the heat to medium. Now as you can see, it's getting a really strong orange color, and that's from the sun-dried tomato paste. Okay, so while we are cooking this, we're gonna add a little bit of salt. There's a couple different ways to measure salt. One is with a traditional measuring spoon. I tend not to do that. What we commonly refer to as pinches would be, this is a small pinch, 2-finger pinch, or you might hear sometimes a 3-finger pinch. So in this case, we're gonna do a 3-finger pinch, which is about equal to ½ a teaspoon. Give that a nice coating. Give it a stir. On this pan over here, I've got water boiling. I have some fresh pasta that I'm going to throw in. It only takes 2 minutes to cook, so we'll do that right at the very end. We're going to let the chicken cook for a few minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, so the chicken is nearly cooked at this point. We're going to now add our spinach. Say I've got about 5 cups, so probably a 12-ounce bag. Anyone that's cooked spinach knows that pretty much 3 pounds reduces to 2 tablespoons, so this may look like a lot, but I assure you it is going to be just perfect. We're going to make sure we stir that around. We've also got some water boiling. We're going to be serving this on top of some fresh linguine. The fresh pasta only takes about a couple minutes to cook, so we'll do that at the very end. I'm going to add some ground pepper. And for those of you that like food with a little bit of spice, I highly recommend adding some crushed red pepper. So I'll add a little bit here, Add as much as you like to your taste. Spinach cooks down very quickly. As soon as the spinach is cooked down and fully incorporated, we're going to add some cream. One important thing to note about cream, you don't want to get it to a rolling boil because it will separate. So once we add the cream, we're going to keep the heat to medium low. That's why we cook the chicken, throw in the aromatics, everything else, because we can utilize a high heat prior to adding the cream. We won't risk damaging the meal that we've spent all this time making. All right. At this point, the spinach is cooked down, but it's not completely wilted. It still has sort of a vibrant green color, and that's something that ideally you'd want to hold on to. So you don't want to let it cook too long. So right now we're going to add some heavy cream. If you don't want to use heavy cream, feel free to use half and half. If you are lactose intolerant, by all means, this could be substituted with dairy-free butter. You know, if you're vegan, especially, you can use a meat substitute. But if you didn't want to use cream or any dairy, this would work perfectly well with chicken broth. Okay, we're going to let this simmer for about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back to finish the pasta, plate this meal, and then start on the appetizer. One very important thing that I meant to mention earlier, but I want to really stress now, is the importance of tasting throughout your meal, especially with respect to salt. You can add salt, you cannot take it away. Sure, you can throw a potato in if you really have a disaster and you need to make it less salty, but generally speaking, you want to be very judicious with your salt use. So tasting along the way is very important. I did just taste the chicken, add a little bit more salt. I'd say the total amount of salt in this dish is roughly about 2 teaspoons right now. That was one of the main lessons that I imparted to my students. I spent many years teaching for a while children, and then moved to adults, to a lot of culinary classes, and that was the number one lesson, I think, aside from discussing sort of the role that water plays in food, but the number one thing was salt and taste throughout your meal. That way you can just ensure that you're in control of the quality throughout the project. So anyway, the chicken is come out beautifully. All of the spinach has reduced. The sauce is nice and incorporated. Everything's just melded together. So now I'm going to put this on a very low heat. And that's another thing that I used to really emphasize in my cooking classes is, you know, I would have students that would ask, you know, if I'm cooking all of these different things, you know, how do I get the timing right? And that's a huge concern, is the timing. Because a lot of home cooks, you know, they say, oh, well, you know, I'd love to cook these 3 meals or these 4 items or whatever it is, but how do I execute it so that everything's ready at the same time, you know, the right temperature? And I'd say that the key to that is understanding sort of your safe pausing times, your safe pausing zone. So right now, we've got this perfectly cooked, and it can just sit and stay warm, and then we don't have to worry about it. We can move on to our appetizer, our salad, things like that, so that when it's time to execute, all you have to do is just blast to the heat for about 30 seconds, and it's perfect. So that being said, I've got the water boiling for the fresh pasta. You can use any pasta. I'm partial to Italian pasta, being an Italian person, but any linguine will do. You can use fresh or dried pasta. This being fresh will only take about 2 minutes to cook, so I'm going to drop that in there. You want to make sure you really separate fresh pasta. Sometimes when they produce fresh pasta, they'll sort of make sure that each piece is individually coated in some sort of a cornmeal to make sure it doesn't stick, but a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. So you have to be extra vigilant with the fresh pasta. The other thing about fresh pasta is that you can salt it nearly at the end because it's so porous. It's nearly already cooked when you put it in the water. So if you forgot to salt your water, you can salt it at the end and it's not the same result. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon here, give it a quick toss. The longer I cook, the more I realize that you know, mastering the understanding of flavor and how ingredients go together is really important, but the thing that is, in my opinion, the most important is understanding the technique. And the more you understand the technique, the more sort of shortcuts you can take to help you get to the finish line so much easier, which takes a lot of anxiety out of the entire project. Okay, so this is really soft. Strain this right here. And speaking to my point about being able to pause, you've cooked your pasta, you're not quite ready to serve dinner. What do you do right now? All you do is you strain the hot water away, pour it back in the pot, make sure your water's nice and cold, and just give it a good little rinse. We'll toss with your hand. This stops the cooking process. Strain it again. And you have paused the cooking for the pasta. The only thing is you have to make sure it doesn't stick together. So we're just gonna tap out that cold water, pop it right back in our pan here. Make sure the heat is off. We're gonna add just a little bit of olive oil, and we're gonna toss it. And this will allow this to sit here until we're ready to use it. All right. We'll be right back with the whipped ricotta dip and the toasted crostini. We're now going to be conquering the whipped ricotta dip, which is a phenomenal crowd pleaser and an excellent option to serve at any dinner party or just something to snack on while you are home. What I've got here is I have a garlic confit. Garlic confit may sound fancy, but it's not. I just took probably half a cup of already peeled garlic cloves intact. I added a whole bunch of extra virgin olive oil and I cooked it on low to medium for about 20 minutes. What you want to look for is a nice golden color. I also added about a teaspoon of salt to this. These come out so tender, so chewy, and what we're going to be doing is spreading them on the crostini. Another method of achieving this end result is taking an entire bulb of garlic and chopping off the top and putting it in tin foil, roasting in the oven, but then you have to deal with prying all of the garlic out of these shells, which is time consuming and tedious. This way it's super easy if you get the already peeled garlic, or if you peel it yourself beforehand. All right, so we've got these toasted pieces of Italian bread. I just brushed a little bit of olive oil on these and roasted them at 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes until they look like toast. So now I've got my garlic confit on the bread. And in this bowl, I have full fat ricotta. And what you want to do, you can use an electric mixer, possibly an immersion blender, or just a whisk with some elbow grease. The objective is to incorporate some air into this to make it a little bit more fluffy, just like whipping cream, but in this case you're whipping ricotta. So you're going to just give it some attention for about 5 minutes. Make sure it's just a little bit fluffier, less dense than it was when it was in the plastic container. Once that happens, you're going to salt it. This is 16 ounces of ricotta. I'm going to add about a half a teaspoon of salt. Again, a 3-finger pinch. And then I'm going to add a 3-finger pinch of pepper. Give that a little stir. So right now this is extremely simple. We have 3 ingredients, including salt and pepper. At this time, we're going to take some fresh parsley. We're just going to throw about a teaspoon in there just for color. Give that a stir. And then you're going to spoon it into a serving dish of your choosing. And then you want to smooth it out, but not completely smooth. You want to leave some nooks and crannies because we're going to drizzle some honey on top. Okay, so I've got some wildflower honey. And there's no wrong to this recipe. It's a lot of times it's really just, if you want it spicy, add more crushed red pepper. If you want it a little bit sweeter, add more honey. But I'd say give it a solid drizzle to begin with. And in this dish I have some zested lemon. One thing I want to say about zesting lemon, it's very important to have a very fine microplane. A lot of times you'll see one with the black handle, you want to look for the one with the red handle, and I have one right here. The reason this is important is because the exterior of every citrus has the pores which contain the essential oils, basically what it makes it smell amazing, and actually imparts 90% of the nutrients. When you get too far beneath the surface, the white part is called the pith and it's very bitter. So I like to use a red handled microplane because it just kind of shaves off the very top. I already have zested one lemon in here, but just for technique purposes, I find that it's easiest. Let's say you've got a bowl and you need to zest a whole bunch of lemons for a recipe. I like to balance the microplane right on the bowl to give you some stability. Start zesting one direction, turn, so on and so forth. And then you just tap it and you'll get whatever's on the bottom where you need it to be. So again, I've got the zest of one lemon, and I let it dry a little bit because if I hadn't let it dry, this would be one sort of oily clump from all of the lemon oil, and I wouldn't be able to sprinkle it. So I let it dry for about 30 minutes. I put it right on top. This imparts a really nice color and scent. I like to top mine with a little bit of crushed red pepper. Feel free to omit. And then you're going to serve this, plate it, however you want to call it, by putting your crostinis with your garlic confit spread arranged like so. And there you go. This is a fantastic, very simple, very quick to make, delicious appetizer. When we come back, we're going to finish plating the Tuscan chicken with the linguine and finishing the galleta salad. All right, so we have the chicken cooked, the linguine's cooked, they are paused. We did the dip with the crostini, and we're gonna do the salad last because if you think about it, you know, the salad goes bad or wilts sooner and kind of needs to be done fresh. So we're gonna do it last. What you're gonna wanna do, this is a really, really simple recipe. I just have probably about 4 cups of arugula, just arugula, nothing else on it. If you're one of those people that hates arugula, by all means, switch it for something else. This recipe works really well with sort of a green that's on the bitter end of the spectrum. So what we're gonna do, and I've got this little Ninja blender, the easiest way to make a salad dressing. And the nice thing about these two is that when you're done, if you put the cap without the blade on, you know, it just can stay in your fridge until you're done and you make a new dressing. So what we're gonna do is gonna cut, you know, lemons greatly vary in size, so these are on the small side. So I'm going to cut about 5 lemons because in a traditional salad dressing you're going to have a vinegar and an oil component. The lemons in this recipe are taking the place of any vinegar, so we're going to use quite a bit. So we're just going to use our citrus juicer. We're going to squeeze. And this should come out to about 1/4 cup, maybe 1/3. If you mix it all together and you're not totally thrilled with it, you know, you can just adjust the levels. If you need some more, just too lemony, add some more oil. If it's not enough lemon, add some more lemon juice. Now, I was just talking about the compote that I made with the garlic that went on the crostinis for the dip. And the nice thing is, sort of with flavor continuity, I'm going to be using some of the leftover garlic from the confit in the salad dressing. If you like a stronger garlic flavor, feel free to use raw, fresh garlic, but cooking the garlic low and slow releases sugars and creates sort of a more mellow flavor profile, tempers it all around. The nice thing about making a confit is the amount of oil. Hopefully you add, you know, as much as you want, but all of this oil in the bowl is thoroughly infused with garlic flavor, so I'm going to be using this in my salad dressing. We're going to do about half and half, so maybe about 4 teaspoons of the infused olive oil, and then the other half with just non-roasted garlic olive oil. So at this point you should have roughly half and half. Half lemon juice and half oil rather. And then we're just going to salt and pepper. With this you're going to want to do like a 6-finger pinch, even though you don't have 6 fingers. The concept behind salad dressing is that it should be as salty as a pickle, if not just a little bit saltier, because you're putting it over a lot of ingredients that have no salt. So when you taste it, if it tastes way too salty, dip a piece of lettuce in it and try it, then you might find that it's perfect. So we're going to add about a 6-finger pinch to that. We're going to add a hefty teaspoon of pepper to this. And then this is the fresh parsley, and add a really nice aggressive pinch of that to this. And then all we have to do is get this lid with the blade on and blend it up. Now what's going to happen is before I push down, you may have heard the term emulsification. It basically just means that you're smashing an oil with a water, or basically a hydrophilic versus a hydrophobic, which just means that hydrophilic likes water, hydrophobic doesn't like water. Hydrophobic being oil, hydrophilic being water. In all dressings, in all things that require emulsification, you need a lot of either elbow grease or a high-powered machine to smash those things together, because like the expression, oil and water don't mix. But in this case, they are going to mix. Okay, and time for tasting. We're going to taste for salt. Well, it's perfect, but you're going to want to remember it has to be as salty as a pickle. So at this point, you have 2 choices. You can move forward and have it be a really tangy, lemon-forward dressing. If you want to soften it a little bit, you can add some honey to it, or sugar, or any sweetener that works for you. But I think this is delicious, so all you're going to do is pour that on top of your greens. And thoroughly coat that. Arugula is a really sturdy green, but you want to be careful not to bruise it. Sturdy meaning that it will hold up to semi-heavy dressing, but if you smash the greens down, they will wilt and get bruised very quickly. So I'm just going to toss that in some dressing. I'm going to finish this off. I have shaved Parmesan. Sprinkle that on top. And then in here is my favorite ingredient. These are roasted pine nuts. These can be found nearly everywhere. They are a little bit expensive. You can substitute for other nuts if you need to. But the rule of thumb for roasting nuts is pop them in the oven, and as soon as you can smell them, they're ready. If you cook them too long, just like the garlic, they'll be burnt and you'll have to throw them away. So I've got this lovely roasted pine nuts I'm going to sprinkle on top, and the salad is complete. The other thing I wanted to mention about the dip is I do happen to have a significant amount of the sun-dried tomato olive oil mixture, which would be an excellent thing to drizzle on top. So I'm going to put a nice dollop in the middle here. That way when you pull the crispiness through, you'll get a little bit of taste of that. And lastly, we're going to plate our linguine and chicken right when we come back. All right, so we are ready to complete our dinner. We're going to plate the Tuscan chicken. Got that pre-cooked linguine that we went over earlier, and how to sort of pause it until we are ready to finish at the end. So you can serve this family style or individually plated, but for this we're just gonna give you a family style presentation. Take your pasta. Just twist it here. I'm gonna take our chicken. And I'm just gonna pour it right on top. Okay, and for garnish, this torn basil that's been sitting here, we're just gonna throw it right on top, because then we're gonna maximize the flavor output of that because it has been cooked. It'll be just fresh and impart all of those. I mean, it smells amazing. Some more of the shaved Parmesan. And a little bit of the crushed red pepper. And now, no matter how many guests you're cooking for, whether it be you, another person, 4 people, 10 people, you've now completed your family or holiday or whatever meal. You've got a salad, you have a dip, and we have a pasta with chicken. Thank you so much for joining me today while we made our gaeta salad, our whipped ricotta dip with crostini, and our Tuscan chicken with fresh linguine. My name is Julia Bertacci at Bertacci Inferno, based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Please follow me on my Instagram. It's Bertacci_Inferno. I had so much fun and look forward to doing this again soon.